The sound of metal grinding filled the air as Pete wrestled with the old compressor in the dimly lit corner of the Bay City metal plant. Its rusted exterior bore the scars of years gone by, but the real secrets lay within, waiting to be uncovered. He wiped the sweat from his brow, the heat of the machinery mixing with the stale odor of oil and grease that clung to the walls. As he loosened the coils, an awkward tension gripped the atmosphere. The compressor had been dormant for too long, its purpose nearly forgotten. With a final tug, the metal hissed, and that's when he saw it. A rubber tube wrapped tightly and sealed with tape, coiled like a serpent ready to strike. Pete's heart raced, a mix of curiosity and apprehension flooding his senses. He glanced around the empty plant floor, the distant hum of machinery echoing in the silence. The fluorescent lights flickered above, casting shadows that seemed to dance with the urgency of his discovery. Curiosity overshadowed caution as he carefully peeled away the tape. Inside, he found not just dust and machinery parts, but a series of reports. The faded document spoke of safety inspections, warnings about cracked valves, and photographs showing the very hazards they faced daily in the plant. Each page felt like a whisper from the past, urging him to pay attention. Tucked within the last page was a handwritten note. "If this stays here, someone will look at it someday." The weight of those words hung in the air, an echo of the responsibility lying heavy on his shoulders. Pete's heart raced, not with fear, but with a sense of urgency. The note wasn't a relic of scandal. It was a plea to remember the risks that came with their work. He could feel the heaviness of accountability pressing down on him. He knew he had to act. "Should I keep this to myself?" he thought. "What if it just ends up in the trash when they shut this place down?" The thought gnawed at him, a seed of doubt planting itself deep in his mind. But as he looked around at the machinery, the faces of his co-workers flashed in his mind. Workers who had spent years in this very space, their lives intertwined with the machines they operated. In that moment, he felt an obligation to the men and women he worked beside. He picked up the phone and dialed 911, not to report a crime, but to ensure that this message was documented, that someone would acknowledge the potential dangers lurking in the shadows of their daily grind. The urgency in his chest spurred him on, a call to action resounding in the quiet corners of the plant. The engineer on duty arrived minutes later, his brow furrowed as he scanned the reports and photographs. Silence filled the room, heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. It was more than a discovery. It was a realization of the unacknowledged risks they all faced, a call to confront the shadows that lingered in the corners of their workplace. Pete's world in Bay City was one of routine. Each morning, he awoke to the sound of his alarm clock buzzing like a persistent fly, its metallic note cutting through the early morning stillness. He would stumble out of bed, the floor cool against his feet, and make his way to the small kitchen in his cramped apartment. The smell of brewing coffee filled the air, mingling with the faint scent of the cornfields just beyond his window. It was a scent he had come to cherish, a reminder of the simple life he had built in this small corner of America. Breakfast was often a quick affair: 2 slices of toast with a smear of peanut butter, a piece of fruit, and that ever-present cup of coffee. As he sat at the tiny kitchen table, a radio crackled in the background, the sound of a familiar voice breaking through the static. The local DJ chatted about the weather, the upcoming county fair, and the usual gossip of the town. It was comforting, a reminder that life continued outside his little bubble. As Pete drove his old pickup truck down the winding roads to the plant, he took in the scenery around him. The fields were lush and green, dotted with wildflowers swaying gently in the summer breeze. He passed by familiar landmarks, the rundown diner where he'd shared countless meals with co-workers, the old church where families gathered on Sundays, and the hardware store where he had bought supplies for various projects over the years. Each landmark held memories, a piece of his life, etched into the fabric of Bay City. Arriving at the plant, Pete felt the familiar hum of machinery wash over him. The building was a sprawling structure of brick and steel, filled with the sounds of labor, hammers clanging, metal grinding, and the low murmur of conversations. He exchanged greetings with colleagues as he made his way to the break room, where the smell of strong coffee mingled with the faint scent of machine oil. The camaraderie was palpable. They were more than just co-workers. They were a family forged by shared experiences and loyalty to one another. Yet beneath the surface of this seemingly tight-knit community, there existed an unspoken tension. Safety discussions were often brushed aside, considered unnecessary by management. Workers like Pete knew the risks, but rarely voiced their concerns. They had witnessed near misses, machines malfunctioning, close calls with heavy equipment, and the ever-present threat of hazardous materials. It was a silent agreement among them to keep their heads down and work hard, the promise of a paycheck looming larger than the consequences of neglecting safety. But that morning felt different. The discovery of the reports stirred something deep within Pete. As he sipped his coffee, he thought about Jimmy, his friend who had lost his hearing over time, not from a single explosive incident, but from the relentless hum of machinery, the hidden erosion of safety that crept in quietly, day after day. It wasn't just about the machines. It was about the people who operated them, their health, and their families. He felt the urge to share what he had found, to ignite a conversation about their safety. But how would he approach it? He had seen too many people brush off their concerns only to be met with dismissive shrugs. What if he was overreacting? The thought lingered, as persistent as the radio's static in the background. But deep down, he knew that accountability was a two-way street. As the workday progressed, the weight of the reports pressed on him. He could hardly focus on his tasks, the machinery around him fading into a blur as he replayed the events of that morning in his mind. Each clang of metal was a reminder of the urgency he felt. He needed to talk to someone to rally his colleagues, but fear gnawed at him, fear of rocking the boat, of being the odd man out. When lunch rolled around, he gathered his courage and headed to the cafeteria. The room was bustling with workers, laughter and chatter filling the air. He spotted familiar faces: Jack, a burly man with a booming laugh; Lisa, who always brought homemade cookies; and Ray, a quiet guy who preferred to blend into the background. They were all there, sharing stories over steaming plates of food. "Hey Pete, you coming to join us?" Jack called out, motioning him over. For a moment Pete hesitated, the weight of the reports heavy in his hands, but he felt a push, an urgency he couldn't ignore. "Actually, I need to talk to all of you," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. Curious glances turned toward him as he took a deep breath. "It's important." They settled at a corner table, food forgotten as Pete laid out what he had found, the reports, the handwritten note, and the implications of their safety. Silence fell over the table, a thick blanket of disbelief. "You found this in the compressor?" Lisa asked, her brow furrowing. "Yeah," he replied. "It's more than just old papers. It's proof that we've been ignoring something crucial. We need to do something about it." Jack leaned back, arms crossed. "You really think this is going to change anything? Management won't listen." "Maybe not," Pete admitted. "But we can't let this be forgotten. If we don't speak up, nothing will change. We can't let fear silence us." The air grew tense as they processed his words. One by one, they exchanged glances, weighing the risk against the potential reward. "I'm with you," Lisa finally said, her voice soft but resolute. "I want to make sure we're safe." "Me too," Ray added quietly, almost shyly. Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair. "All right, let's do it. But we need to be smart about this. We can't just storm into the office, we need a plan." As they discussed their next steps, a sense of purpose washed over the group, binding them together in a common cause. They shared stories of close calls, incidents that had gone unreported, and the little things they had dismissed over the years. Each tale became a thread woven into the fabric of their community, reminding them that they were more than just workers. They were guardians of each other's safety. With each story, the room felt charged with energy. Jack spoke about an incident where a co-worker narrowly escaped injury when a piece of equipment malfunctioned. "It was just luck that Dave wasn't standing closer when that thing exploded," he said, his voice rising with frustration. If it had been just a few seconds earlier, Lisa chimed in, her eyes wide with concern. And remember the time the crane almost dropped that load on Tim? The safety checks were either ignored or just plain not done. What if it had been worse? They all nodded, the weight of their shared experiences forging a deeper connection among them. Pete felt invigorated. This was what he needed. He wasn't alone in this fight. "We need to compile these stories," Pete said, his mind racing with ideas. "If we gather enough evidence and experiences, we can present it to management. They have to take us seriously if we show them that it's not just about the machines but about people's lives." Over the next hour they brainstormed, jotting down notes and ideas on napkins. Their lunch turned into a brainstorming session as the cafeteria buzzed around them. Ideas flowed freely, and with each suggestion, their resolve grew stronger. "Let's set up a meeting in the cafeteria," Pete said, his voice steady despite the unease. "We need to talk about this, even if only a few show up." The cafeteria buzzed with activity as Pete and his friends cleared their plates and headed back to the plant floor. The work continued, but there was a new energy in the air, a sense of purpose that replaced the usual monotony of their tasks. As the day wore on, Pete felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. The meeting loomed over him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that this was a pivotal moment. He made the rounds, casually talking to coworkers, gauging their interest in joining the meeting. Most were receptive, their expressions shifting from indifference to concern as he explained the situation. By the time the final whistle blew, the cafeteria was buzzing with anticipation. Workers gathered, some nursing cups of coffee, others clutching their lunch bags, all curious about what Pete had to say. The room filled with familiar faces, yet there was an unfamiliar heaviness in the air, an acknowledgement of the risks they had ignored for too long. As he stood at the front, Pete felt an array of emotions wash over him: nervousness, determination, and a flicker of hope. The weight of their collective experiences hung in the air, a palpable reminder of their shared struggles. He cleared his throat, drawing attention to himself. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady, despite the flutter of anxiety in his stomach. "I know this isn't easy, but we need to talk about something that affects every single one of us." He held up the reports, the faded pages waving slightly in his grip. "I found these in the compressor this morning. They detail safety inspections, warning signs we've all seen but ignored. We can't let this go unnoticed any longer." The room fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Faces turned serious and murmurs echoed softly as they began to absorb the gravity of what he was saying. "We all know this place isn't as safe as it should be," he continued, his eyes scanning the crowd. "Too many of us have experienced close calls or watched as accidents happened without anyone taking responsibility. This is our chance to change that." Jack stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. "Pete's right. We can't keep quiet any longer. For too long we've brushed aside our concerns hoping someone else would take care of it, but it's up to us to take a stand." As the discussion unfolded, stories poured out like a dam breaking. Workers shared their near misses, each anecdote adding to the growing urgency in the room. The fear that had once silenced them transformed into a collective determination to fight for their safety. Pete felt the energy shift. No longer were they merely workers clocking in and out. They were a community united by a common goal. The air crackled with resolve as they began to outline their plan. They would gather testimonies, create a petition, and approach management together, demanding that their voices be heard. As the meeting wrapped up, Pete felt a swell of pride. They had started something significant, and together they would push for change. The compressor, once a forgotten relic, had sparked a movement that could alter their workplace for the better. As he left the cafeteria that evening, the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the plant. It felt like a new beginning, a chance to reclaim their voices and protect each other. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long while, Pete felt hopeful. Together they had the power to create a safer future, not just for themselves but for everyone who walked through the doors of the Bay City metal plant. As the autumn leaves began to fall, painting the landscape around Bay City in hues of orange and gold, the atmosphere at the metal plant was alive with hope and determination. The safety committee had solidified its presence within the plant, and the conversations about safety regulations had evolved from whispered concerns to open discussions. Workers who had once felt isolated in their fears now stood united, their voices harmonizing into a powerful chorus demanding attention and change. Pete arrived at the plant early one morning, the air crisp with the promise of a new day. He parked his old pickup truck and took a moment to breathe in the invigorating scent of the cool morning air. It was a stark contrast to the heavy, metallic smells of the plant that would soon greet him. Stepping inside, he felt the familiar thrill of purpose coursing through his veins. They had come so far, yet he knew the journey was still unfolding. The break room buzzed with energy, the sound of coffee brewing mingling with laughter as workers gathered to discuss the latest safety measures. Pete joined Lisa and Ray at their usual table, where they were reviewing their notes for the upcoming safety meeting with management. "Good morning, Pete," Lisa beamed, her enthusiasm infectious. "I was just telling Ray about the positive feedback we've been getting from the workers. People are really starting to engage with the safety protocols." "Yeah, I've noticed that too," Pete replied, sipping his coffee. "It feels like the momentum is on our side, but we have to keep pushing. The meeting with Mr. Collins is important and we need to make sure we present our points clearly." Ray nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I think we should emphasize how safety improvements can lead to better productivity. If everyone feels safe, they'll perform better. It's a win-win for everyone." As the three delved into their notes, Pete felt a surge of gratitude for the support of his friends. Their dedication mirrored his own, and together they formed a formidable team. They spent the next hour refining their arguments and gathering anecdotes from fellow workers, ensuring they were well prepared for the meeting later that day. When the time arrived, the three friends walked into the conference room with a mix of anticipation and nerves. The room was brightly lit, a stark contrast to the dimly lit areas of the plant. Mr. Collins sat at the head of the table, his expression serious, yet open. "Thank you for coming," he said, gesturing for them to take a seat. "I've reviewed the feedback from your last petition and the various concerns you've raised. I appreciate your commitment to improving safety in the plant." Pete took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. "Thank you for meeting with us again, Mr. Collins. We want to share our thoughts on how to enhance the safety measures already in place, and we believe that these changes can make a significant difference." As they presented their findings, they emphasized the importance of regular safety training for all employees, comprehensive equipment checks, and a more transparent reporting process for safety incidents. Each point was reinforced by real-life examples from their colleagues, highlighting the urgency of their cause. "I've seen firsthand the impact that unsafe practices can have," Lisa spoke passionately. "When we ignore the warning signs, we're not just putting ourselves at risk, we're risking the lives of our co-workers." "Exactly," Ray added, "and we're not just asking for changes for the sake of it. A safer workplace is a more productive workplace. It's in everyone's best interest, including management's." As they spoke, Pete could see Mr. Collins absorbing their words. There was an openness in his demeanor that hadn't been there before. The manager took notes, nodding occasionally, and this small gesture gave Pete a flicker of hope. After their presentation, there was a moment of silence as Mr. Collins reflected on what he had heard. "I appreciate your passion and dedication to the safety of your co-workers. I can assure you that I will take these suggestions seriously and discuss them with upper management." The meeting concluded with a sense of accomplishment. They had put their concerns on the table, and while they knew change wouldn't happen overnight, they felt hopeful that their voices were being heard. As they left the conference room, Lisa turned to Pete and Ray, a smile spreading across her face. "That went really well. I think we're making an impact," she exclaimed. Pete nodded, unable to suppress a grin. "Yes, but we can't get complacent. We have to keep following up and ensuring that our concerns are addressed." The weeks that followed were a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. The safety committee met regularly, and they continued to gather feedback from their co-workers. The commitment to safety became a shared responsibility, with each worker taking it upon themselves to look out for one another. One day during a safety meeting, Pete noticed a new face among the usual crew. A young woman named Sarah had recently joined the plant and was eager to contribute to the safety discussions. As she spoke about her previous experiences in different factories, her passion for safety shone through. "In my last job, we implemented a buddy system for safety checks," she suggested. "It encouraged workers to look out for each other, and it fostered a culture of accountability. Maybe we could try something like that here." The idea sparked a lively discussion among the group. Pete saw the excitement in everyone's eyes, the realization that they were all invested in creating a safer workplace. They decided to implement the buddy system, pairing up workers for safety inspections and encouraging open discussions about potential hazards. As the months rolled on, the changes began to take shape. The management started to prioritize safety inspections, and workers felt empowered to report concerns without fear. The compressor, once a neglected piece of equipment, was now the focal point of a renewed commitment to safety. Pete often found himself standing near it, reminding colleagues of the journey they had taken together. Then, one chilly morning, the unthinkable happened. As workers began arriving at the plant, the atmosphere was heavy with tension. A loud crash echoed from the maintenance area, sending a wave of panic through the facility. Pete rushed toward the sound, his heart racing. When he arrived, he found a group of workers gathered around a fallen piece of equipment, a large mechanical arm that had malfunctioned during a routine check. The scene was chaotic, but thankfully no one was injured. The workers had reacted quickly, but the incident sent a shockwave through the plant. Pete stepped into the crowd, his presence steadying as he assessed the situation. "What happened?" he asked, scanning the faces around him. "We were doing routine maintenance and it just fell," one of the maintenance workers replied, his voice shaking. "We didn't have time to react." Fueled by adrenaline, Pete took charge. "Let's clear the area and make sure everyone is safe. We need to report this incident to management immediately." The workers quickly worked together to secure the area, ensuring that no one else could approach the malfunctioning equipment. The camaraderie that had built up over the months shone through, with everyone eager to help. After they had secured the area, Pete led the group in reporting the incident to Mr. Collins. They gathered in the conference room, their faces serious and determined. "We need to address this issue immediately," Pete asserted. "This isn't just an isolated incident, it's a sign that we need to reevaluate our safety protocols." Mr. Collins nodded, his expression grave. "I understand the urgency. I'll have an investigation launched immediately. We need to ensure that this doesn't happen again." As the days passed, the investigation unfolded, and the results revealed significant oversights in the maintenance procedures. The findings underscored the importance of their advocacy for safety. In the aftermath, the management implemented stricter safety standards and reinforced training sessions for all employees. They began to hold mandatory safety drills, ensuring that everyone knew how to react in case of emergencies. The collective efforts of Pete and his colleagues had led to meaningful change, and they felt a renewed sense of purpose. During one of the safety drills, Pete watched as workers practiced evacuation procedures. There was a sense of pride swelling within him. They had built a culture of safety where everyone was invested in each other's well-being. After the drill, Lisa approached Pete, her eyes glimmering with excitement. "I can't believe how far we've come. This would have never happened without our efforts." "You're right," Pete agreed, a smile spreading across his face. "It's incredible to see everyone taking this seriously. But we can't stop here. We have to keep pushing for improvements." As winter approached, the challenges of maintaining safety in the plant grew more pronounced. The cold weather brought different risks, including icy surfaces and malfunctioning equipment due to the temperature drops. Pete knew they had to remain vigilant, even in the face of these new challenges. One afternoon, as the crew gathered for a safety meeting, Pete could feel the weight of the winter chill seeping into the room. The gathering was filled with familiar faces, but he sensed a hesitance among some workers. "All right, everyone," Pete began, addressing the group. "We've made great progress in our safety protocols, but we need to remain vigilant as the weather changes. I want to hear from you all. What concerns do you have?" A voice from the back spoke up. "I'm worried about the icy conditions outside. It's hard to navigate safely when the ground is slick." Another worker nodded in agreement. "And what about the equipment? I've noticed some of the machines are struggling to operate in the cold." The concerns echoed throughout the room, and Pete felt a surge of responsibility. "Let's address these issues head-on. We can implement a daily safety check for icy conditions and ensure that management is aware of any equipment malfunctions due to the cold." As they brainstormed solutions, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The initial hesitance transformed into a collaborative effort, with each person contributing to the safety discussion. They outlined a plan to monitor conditions regularly and report any concerns immediately. After the meeting, Pete gathered a few colleagues to tackle the icy conditions outside. They grabbed shovels and salt, ready to tackle the slippery walkways. As they worked together, laughter and camaraderie filled the air. "Who knew we'd be shoveling snow instead of making metal?" Ray joked, chuckling as he tossed a handful of salt onto the pavement. "It's all part of the job now," Lisa replied, tossing a snowball at him playfully. The lightheartedness of the moment served as a reminder of how far they had come. They were a family, bound by shared experiences and a commitment to each other's safety. As winter deepened, the challenges continued, but so did their resolve. Pete found himself reflecting on the journey they had taken over the past months. They had started as individuals concerned for their own safety and had transformed into a united front, advocating for an entire workforce. Through every challenge, they had emerged stronger. Each day brought new opportunities for improvement, and Pete knew that their advocacy for safety would not only impact their workplace, but would also extend to their families and the community around them. One evening as he drove home, the sun setting in a blaze of color over the horizon, Pete felt a profound sense of gratitude. He thought about the relationships he had built, the struggles they had faced, and the lives they had touched. As he pulled into his driveway, he couldn't help but smile. They had fought for their safety, and in doing so, they had forged a community that believed in each other. They were no longer just workers at the Bay City metal plant. They were the guardians of one another's safety, advocates for change and champions of a brighter future. And as the cold winds of winter howled outside, Pete felt a warmth within, a light of hope that would continue to shine brightly in their hearts. The biting cold of winter settled over Bay City, wrapping the metal plant in a frigid embrace. Inside, however, the atmosphere was anything but chilly. The safety committee had gained traction, and the camaraderie among the workers was palpable. They had been through a lot together, and the bond they formed through shared advocacy was unshakable. One morning, the air was filled with a crisp clarity as Pete made his way to the plant. He took a moment to appreciate the stark beauty of the frost-kissed landscape surrounding him. The fields were blanketed with glistening snow, the sunlight sparkling like diamonds across the surface. It was a beautiful contrast to the serious work that lay ahead. As he entered the plant, he was greeted by the familiar sounds of machinery humming to life. Workers were already bustling about, but there was an undertone of excitement that he hadn't felt before. As Pete made his way to the break room, he overheard snippets of conversation. Everyone seemed eager to discuss the upcoming safety meeting scheduled for later that day. "Have you heard? Management's bringing in a safety consultant?" one worker exclaimed, her voice tinged with enthusiasm. "Yeah, they're going to review our procedures and suggest improvements. This could be a game changer," another replied, the hope in his tone evident. Pete's heart raced as he processed the news. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the opportunity to have a professional assess their safety protocols and provide concrete recommendations. It felt like a recognition of their hard work and dedication. In the break room, Lisa and Ray were already gathered, flipping through notes and preparing for the meeting. "Did you hear the news?" Pete asked, unable to contain his excitement. "Yeah, this is huge," Lisa replied, her eyes shining with determination. We've worked hard to get to this point. We need to make sure we're ready to present our ideas and concerns clearly. The trio spent the morning preparing. They reviewed the safety reports they had compiled, stories of near misses and equipment malfunctions, and the suggestions they had gathered from their coworkers. The weight of responsibility felt heavier than usual, but it also ignited a fierce resolve within them. When the time for the meeting arrived, Pete felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. They gathered in the conference room, which was now filled with workers eager to participate. Mr. Collins was there, along with a tall man in a crisp suit who Pete assumed was the safety consultant. "Thank you all for coming," Mr. Collins began, his demeanor more serious than usual. "I'm pleased to introduce Bob Richards, our safety consultant. He'll be reviewing our current protocols and providing insights on areas for improvement." The room fell silent as Bob stepped forward. He had a commanding presence, his eyes scanning the room with an intensity that demanded attention. "I'm looking forward to working with all of you," he said, his voice steady. "Safety is a priority in any workplace, and I believe that together we can enhance our practices to create an even safer environment." As the meeting progressed, Bob led a thorough review of the current safety protocols. He asked questions and encouraged input from the workers, emphasizing the importance of their experiences. Pete felt a surge of pride as he listened to his co-workers share their thoughts. "During the winter, we need to be especially vigilant about icy conditions," one worker pointed out. "We've already seen how dangerous it can be if we're not careful." Bob nodded, taking notes. "Absolutely. It's vital that your team communicates any hazards or concerns promptly. We'll work on strategies to ensure these issues are addressed swiftly." As the discussion unfolded, Pete realized that this was more than just a review. It was a collaborative effort to improve their safety culture. Workers began to share their personal experiences, the stories that had driven them to fight for change. Each narrative added depth to their case, illustrating the need for enhanced safety measures. "Last year I nearly got hurt because of a malfunctioning machine," said a worker named Thomas, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "If I hadn't acted quickly, things could have turned out much differently. We need to make sure that everyone is aware of the risks." Bob listened intently, his expression thoughtful. "Thank you for sharing, Thomas. Your experience highlights the importance of ongoing training and awareness. We'll develop a comprehensive training program tailored to your specific needs." As the meeting progressed, momentum built. Ideas flowed freely, and the workers felt empowered to speak openly. The atmosphere was charged with a sense of collective purpose. They were no longer just advocating for safety. They were actively participating in shaping their workplace. By the time the meeting wrapped up, everyone felt a sense of accomplishment. Bob had committed to creating a detailed assessment of their safety practices, complete with actionable recommendations. The excitement in the room was palpable, and as they filed out, Pete couldn't help but feel hopeful about the future. Over the next few weeks, Bob worked closely with the safety committee. He conducted thorough inspections of the plant, gathering data and insights, while continuously engaging with the workers to understand their concerns. Pete found himself collaborating more with Bob than he had anticipated, and he appreciated the consultant's willingness to listen. One afternoon, as they reviewed the results of an inspection, Bob turned to Pete with a serious expression. "You've got a great team here, Pete. I can see that there's a strong commitment to safety among your coworkers. That's half the battle. The other half is making sure you have the right systems in place." "I think we're on the right track," Pete replied, feeling a sense of pride in his colleagues. "Everyone is invested in making this a safer place to work. We've come a long way." Bob nodded, a glimmer of respect in his eyes. "That's crucial. I'll be presenting my recommendations to management soon, and I think they'll be impressed by what I've seen." The day of the presentation arrived, and the tension in the plant was undeniable. Workers gathered in the conference room, their faces a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Pete felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him again, but he also felt a surge of hope. They had fought for this moment, and now they were about to see the fruits of their labor. As Bob began his presentation, Pete listened intently. The consultant outlined the key findings from the inspections, highlighting areas where safety protocols had improved and areas that still required attention. He praised the workers for their commitment to safety, emphasizing the importance of their contributions to the process. "Your voices matter," Bob said, looking around the room. "The passion I've witnessed here is a testament to your dedication to each other's safety. Together we can create a culture where safety is paramount." The presentation continued, and Bob introduced several recommendations, including enhanced training programs, regular safety drills, and a more robust reporting system for incidents. The energy in the room shifted as the workers realized that their voices were being heard and that real change was on the horizon. After the presentation, there was a palpable sense of excitement. Mr. Collins stood up, his expression serious but appreciative. "I want to thank Bob for his thorough assessment and all of you for your commitment to safety. We will be implementing these recommendations, and I expect everyone to continue advocating for safety in the workplace." As the meeting adjourned, the workers erupted into applause. They had done it. They had successfully pushed for change and had gained a commitment from management to prioritize safety. Later that day, as Pete walked through the plant, he couldn't help but smile. He overheard workers discussing the upcoming training programs and sharing ideas on how to further improve safety measures. The energy was electric, and he felt a sense of pride wash over him. They had built something special together, a culture of safety that would benefit everyone. That evening, as the sun set over Bay City, painting the sky in vibrant hues, Pete reflected on their journey. The compressor, once a symbol of neglect, now stood as a testament to their hard work and advocacy. They had turned fear into empowerment, silence into voices, and loneliness into community. As he drove home, he felt hopeful about the future. The path ahead may still hold challenges, but they were no longer facing them alone. Together, they had forged a bond that would withstand the test of time, and he knew that they would continue to fight for each other's safety, ensuring a brighter tomorrow. And in that moment, as the landscape rushed by, Pete knew that they had truly become guardians of one another's well-being, champions of change in the heart of Bay City. As winter deepened, the nights grew longer, and the air carried a crisp chill that hinted at the challenges ahead. The Bay City metal plant buzzed with activity, but the atmosphere was tinged with an undercurrent of anxiety. The commitment to safety had taken root, but the realities of working in a facility that dealt with heavy machinery and hazardous materials remained ever present. Pete felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders as the safety committee prepared for their first training session with the new protocols recommended by Bob, the safety consultant. Workers filed into the break room, their faces a mix of apprehension and resolve. They had made significant strides toward a culture of safety, but many were still unsure about how to implement the changes. "Hey, everyone," Pete called out, trying to inject some enthusiasm into the room. "Today's a big step forward for us. We're not just going through the motions. We're building a workplace where we all feel safe and valued." Lisa stood beside him, holding a clipboard filled with notes. "Remember, this isn't just about compliance. It's about looking out for each other. Each of us has a role to play in ensuring our safety." Ray nodded in agreement, stepping forward to address the group. "We've all been through a lot this past year, but we've come together to advocate for change, and now it's time to take action." As they began the training session, the room filled with a blend of nervous energy and determination. Bob facilitated the first half of the session, leading discussions on the recommended safety protocols. He emphasized the importance of open communication and the need for everyone to feel empowered to report hazards or concerns. "Safety is a shared responsibility," Bob reiterated. "If you see something, say something. Your voices are crucial in creating a safe work environment." As the session progressed, Pete noticed the workers gradually opening up. They began sharing their experiences with safety incidents, discussing their fears and challenges. The vulnerability among the group fostered a sense of unity, reinforcing their commitment to one another. During a break, Pete took a moment to speak with Thomas, the worker who had previously shared his near-miss experience. "How are you feeling about the training so far?" Pete asked, genuinely curious. "It's good," Thomas replied, his brow furrowed in thought. "But I still worry about whether management will really follow through. What if they don't take our concerns seriously?" Pete nodded, understanding the skepticism. "I know it's hard to trust after everything that's happened, but we're in a different place now. We have the chance to hold them accountable, and we can do this together." As the training resumed, the workers engaged in hands-on demonstrations of safety protocols. They practiced using emergency equipment, reviewed proper machine operation, and participated in mock drills. The atmosphere was electric with focus and determination. By the end of the session, fatigue settled over the group, but it was accompanied by a newfound sense of purpose. The workers had contributed to shaping their safety culture, and they felt empowered to continue advocating for change. Later that week, as Pete drove home from the plant, he reflected on the training. The conversations, the shared stories, and the collective commitment to safety filled him with hope. They were no longer just employees at the plant. They were a community bound by a shared mission. As he arrived home, the familiar scent of dinner wafted through the air. His wife, Mary, greeted him with a warm smile. "How was your day?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Good," Pete replied, a smile creeping across his face. "We had our first safety training session and it went really well. Everyone showed up, and I think they're starting to feel more confident about speaking up." "That's fantastic," Mary exclaimed. "You've worked so hard for this. I knew you could make a difference." That night, as they sat together at the dinner table, Pete shared stories from the training session. He spoke about the enthusiasm in the room, the workers' willingness to engage, and the sense of camaraderie that had blossomed. "I feel like we're on the brink of something important," he said, his voice filled with conviction. "We're creating a culture where everyone feels responsible for safety and knows they can speak up." Mary nodded, her expression thoughtful. "But you also need to take care of yourself, Pete. This is a big responsibility." "I know," he replied, a hint of fatigue creeping into his tone. "But I'm passionate about this. I want to make sure everyone goes home safe to their families." As winter settled in, the safety committee continued to meet regularly, brainstorming new initiatives to keep safety at the forefront of their minds. They organized monthly check-ins, encouraging workers to share their concerns and experiences. The discussions evolved into productive conversations about safety improvements, and workers began to hold each other accountable. One day, as they gathered for their monthly meeting, Pete noticed a change in the atmosphere. There was a palpable sense of ownership among the workers. They were no longer waiting for management to take action. They were proactive in identifying and addressing safety hazards. "Let's talk about the icy conditions outside again," Lisa suggested as the meeting began. "We need to ensure that everyone is aware of the risks and that we're doing everything we can to mitigate them." Another worker chimed in. "What if we designate a few people to inspect the walkways and report any issues? If we all keep an eye out, we can prevent accidents before they happen." The ideas flowed freely, and Pete felt a surge of pride as he watched his coworkers take the initiative. They were becoming advocates for their own safety, and it was evident that the culture had shifted. After the meeting, the group decided to implement a buddy system for monitoring icy conditions. They assigned pairs of workers to inspect different areas of the plant and report back on any hazards they encountered. Each worker felt empowered to contribute to the safety of their colleagues, and the sense of community grew stronger. As winter pressed on, the Bay City metal plant continued to thrive. The commitment to safety became a cornerstone of their workplace culture, and Pete felt a profound sense of purpose in the changes they had achieved. However, the true test of their commitment came one fateful morning. As Pete arrived at the plant, he noticed that the temperature had dropped significantly overnight, leaving a thin layer of ice coating the walkways. He felt a knot tighten in his stomach as he recalled their discussions about safety. During the morning shift, Pete and his coworkers took extra precautions as they navigated the icy paths. They moved cautiously, aware of the risks, but determined to look out for one another. As they worked, Pete saw a fellow worker, Sarah, slip on a patch of ice. Time seemed to slow as she fell, her arms flailing for balance. But before she could hit the ground, another co-worker, Jack, rushed forward and caught her just in time. "Whoa, that was close," Jack exclaimed, helping Sarah regain her footing. "You okay?" "I'm fine, just a little shaken," Sarah replied, her cheeks flushed from the sudden scare. "Thanks for catching me." Pete felt a swell of pride as he witnessed the quick reactions of his co-workers. They were looking out for each other, just as they had discussed in their meetings. The training had prepared them, and it showed. As the day progressed, Pete felt a renewed sense of commitment. The workers continued to monitor the icy conditions, ensuring the walkways were safe. They collaborated and communicated, reinforcing the culture of safety they had nurtured together. Later that week, they held another meeting to discuss the incident. Pete reminded everyone of their commitment to looking out for one another and the importance of staying vigilant. "Today was a reminder of why we're doing this," he said, his voice steady. "We're not just co-workers. We're a community that cares for each other. Let's keep that at the forefront of our minds." As winter began to fade into spring, the warmth of the sun began to thaw the icy conditions that had plagued them. The safety committee continued to meet regularly, and the workers felt a sense of pride in what they had built together. One evening, as Pete stood on his porch watching the sunset over Bay City, he felt a sense of hope for the future. The journey had been long and challenging, but they had emerged stronger and more united than ever. They had turned their fears into a commitment to safety, and together, they were shaping a brighter future for the Bay City metal plant. With the fading light, Pete believed in the power of community. They had become guardians of each other's safety, champions of change, and together they were ensuring that every worker could go home safe to their families, day after day. As spring approached, the atmosphere at the Bay City metal plant began to shift. The harshness of winter faded, replaced by the gentle warmth of the sun and the scent of fresh blooms outside. Inside the plant, however, the commitment to safety remained paramount. Pete felt a sense of pride whenever he walked through the bustling facility, witnessing firsthand the transformation that had taken place. The safety committee had implemented several initiatives in the months since Bob's recommendations, and the workers were actively engaged in creating a culture of safety that resonated through the entire plant. Training sessions were now a regular occurrence, and each one was met with enthusiasm. Workers began to volunteer to lead discussions, sharing their experiences and insights. One afternoon, the committee gathered to evaluate how far they had come and discuss future goals. Pete glanced around the room, taking in the faces of his colleagues. Each one was filled with determination and camaraderie. "Today, I want us to reflect on what we've accomplished," Pete began, his voice steady. "We've made significant strides in safety, and I think we're ready to take the next step, establishing a formal safety committee that includes representatives from every department. This way, everyone's voice can be heard." A murmur of agreement rippled through the group, and Lisa leaned forward, her eyes bright. "That's a great idea. If we have representatives, we can address specific concerns that arise in different areas, making our safety culture even stronger." Ray nodded, adding, "We should also consider organizing a safety fair. It could help raise awareness and allow workers to showcase their commitment to safety." The idea of a safety fair energized the room, and they began brainstorming ways to make it happen. Each person contributed ideas, from inviting local safety experts to creating engaging activities that would encourage participation. As the weeks passed, the safety fair began to take shape. Flyers were posted throughout the plant, and excitement grew among the workers. The event would include demonstrations, safety games, and informative sessions, all aimed at reinforcing their commitment to safety while fostering a sense of community. On the day of the fair, the plant buzzed with energy. Workers set up booths and arranged equipment for demonstrations. The air was filled with laughter and chatter as employees and their families arrived, eager to participate. Pete walked through the bustling hall, feeling a sense of accomplishment swell within him. "Great turnout," Lisa exclaimed, Her face lit up with excitement as she surveyed the crowd. "Absolutely," Pete replied, a smile spreading across his face. "This shows how invested everyone is in our safety culture." As the fair unfolded, workers participated in safety challenges, learned about proper equipment handling, and engaged in conversations about safety best practices. Children explored interactive games that taught them the importance of safety at a young age. The atmosphere was vibrant, filled with laughter and a sense of purpose. Toward the end of the day, Pete gathered everyone for a closing speech. He felt a surge of gratitude as he looked at the faces of his colleagues. "Today has been a testament to our commitment to each other's safety. We've built a culture where everyone feels empowered to speak up and contribute. Let's carry this energy forward and continue advocating for a safe workplace." The applause that followed echoed through the plant, and Pete felt a rush of pride. They had transformed their fears into a foundation for safety and community. As spring turned into summer, the safety committee continued to flourish. With each passing month, the workers remained vigilant, collaborating to address new challenges that arose. They regularly revisited safety protocols, ensuring that everyone felt informed and empowered. One day, as Pete prepared to leave the plant, he caught sight of the compressor once again. It had become a symbol of their journey, a reminder of the struggles they had faced and the triumphs they had achieved. As he walked to his truck, Pete felt a deep sense of satisfaction. They had not only changed their workplace, they had cultivated a community. Each worker was now a guardian of safety, looking out for one another and advocating for improvement. Driving home, the sun setting behind him, Pete reflected on how far they had come. The Bay City metal plant was no longer just a place of work. It was a thriving community built on trust, accountability, and shared purpose. And in the warmth of that summer evening, Pete knew that together, they could face whatever challenges lay ahead, confident in their commitment to one another's safety and well-being. The journey had been long, but it was far from over. This was just the beginning. As summer settled comfortably over Bay City, the atmosphere at the metal plant buzzed with a renewed sense of purpose. The safety committee had transformed from a fledgling initiative into a cornerstone of the workplace culture. Pete watched as his colleagues embraced their roles as advocates for safety, and he felt proud of the community they had built together. One afternoon, the safety committee prepared for their annual review meeting with management. The room was filled with a mix of excitement and nerves. Pete stood at the front, ready to present the progress they had made over the past year. "Thank you for joining us today," Pete began, glancing at the faces of his fellow committee members. "We're here to share how our commitment to safety has transformed our workplace, and how we can continue to improve." Lisa stepped forward, enthusiasm radiating from her. "This year, we held a successful safety fair that engaged our workers and sparked important conversations about safety practices. It demonstrated our collective commitment to a safer work environment." Ray added, "The buddy system has proven invaluable, especially during the icy mornings. It's encouraged everyone to look out for one another, reinforcing our culture of care." As they shared their stories and statistics, Pete noticed the management team nodding, clearly impressed by the tangible impact of their initiatives. The presentation culminated in personal anecdotes, including a story of a worker who reported a potential hazard, preventing a serious accident. "Thanks to our open communication, we caught a critical issue before it could lead to injury," Pete emphasized. "This is a testament to the culture we've built, a workplace where every voice matters." Mr. Collins smiled, leaning forward. "I want to commend all of you for your hard work and dedication. It's evident that safety is truly a priority here. We will implement your recommendations and invest further in safety initiatives." Relief washed over the committee as they exchanged proud glances. They had successfully conveyed their message and garnered management support. Later that week, the workers celebrated their success at a local diner. Laughter and camaraderie filled the air as they reflected on their journey. Pete felt a sense of belonging as he looked around at his friends and colleagues, now a family united by their commitment to each other's safety. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the gathering, Pete felt hopeful for the future. They had accomplished so much together, and he knew they were prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead, together. The seeds of change they had planted were now blossoming into a thriving community dedicated to ensuring everyone went home safe at the end of the day.